Well, this certainly is an interesting train of thought to board, because today what I wanted to do was talk about the Red Wings and the Canucks. We're not talking about the game from 2 nights ago on Sunday. That is technically old news at this point, right? With the Red Wings winning their 6th game in a row and the Canucks having yet another defeat in the post-JT Miller days. Those stats will be updated later today, as both the Canucks and the Wings have themselves hockey games against the Colorado Avalanche and the Seattle Kraken, respectively. But today I wanted to head over to Detroit Hockey Now and read a piece published by Kevin Allen from 3 days ago that talks about that huge Vancouver Canucks trade from last week. And it asks whether or not the Wings missed out. This show is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go out there and check out the first link in the description to save some money on your VPN, get some free months, and support the channel all in the process. Also linked in the description, though, will be this piece from Kevin Allen on February 1st. The Daily. Did the Red Wings miss out on Miller? Mishkov benched. Of course, we are talking about the JT Miller trade. And whether or not Detroit missed out on this situation. Is this the appropriate trade price that is talked about in this article, and would this sort of a move even been appropriate for Stevie Y and his squad to make? The article talks about how Vancouver moved Miller along with throw-ins Eric Bronstrom and Jackson Dorrington to the Rangers for Filip Chytil, Victor Mancini, and a top 13 protected 2025 first-round draft pick. The Rangers have to accept all of Miller's $8 million salary. He is tied up till 2029-2030. The article then talks about how the Canucks traded that same first-round pick, plus Vinny Desharnais, plus Danton Heinen, plus Melvin Farnstrom to the Penguins for Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. So essentially, the Canucks traded away a whole bunch of scraps from their team, plus JT Miller, in exchange for Marcus Pettersson, Drew O'Connor, Victor Mancini, and Filip Chytil. The article then talks about how the Rangers will use Miller as their number 1 center, and Mika Zibanejad and Vinny Trocheck, these guys have been kinda off this season, so JT Miller is obviously going to go into New York and he's going to be tasked with being the number 1 guy. This is where Allen deviates from the Rangers' POV and switches it over to Detroit's POV. It's Detroit Hockey Now, after all, right? The Red Wings could have used a center like Miller for their second line, but their fit with Vancouver was far more complicated. The Red Wings only have $1.8 million in cap space, and the Canucks did not want to take big salaried players back. Jonathan Berggren is probably the closest forward in age and skill to Chytil, but he is not as proven as Chytil, who has 75 career goals at age 25. The Red Wings don't have a defenseman quite like the 6'3", 230-pound Victor Mancini, who has NHL experience at 22. The Rangers and the Canucks were very high on Mancini. Axel Sandin Pellikka is the best offensive defenseman in Sweden. The Red Wings were not giving him up. They have given Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, and Moritz Seider long-term deals worth more than $8 million a year. Did they want a 4th piece in that salary range? Plus, Detroit would have needed to move JT Compher and Justin Hall, and that wasn't going to happen with Vancouver. And my question to that last point is, really? Why? Like, JT Compher? Come on. I'm not too sure if this article is insinuating that Vancouver would not have wanted to take on Compher and Hall, or that Detroit would not have been wanting to move on from one of these guys. Actually, I think it's the latter. Yeah, no, sorry, that's my misunderstanding. The Canucks probably would have needed to take on a Compher or a Hall in this trade, but they definitely would not have wanted to do that, considering the money and the caliber of talent that both of these guys bring to the game. I mean, JT Miller for JT Compher sounds like a pretty fun trade on paper just because of the names, but JT Compher is making $5.1 million a year till the end of 2028 at 29 years old. Sure, he's under half a point a game this season. He's on pace for 34 points. 2 seasons ago, he had 52 points with the Colorado Avalanche, but Compher has definitely not been in that territory this year in terms of his on-ice play. He has taken a bit of a step back, and unfortunately, that's not the kind of player that Vancouver would be interested in. Justin Hall as well, for all the talk that they need a right-handed defenseman. While Hall is good in the room, and while it is true that everybody who is a teammate of Hall seems to like him a lot, he's making $3.4 million a year till the end of next season, and for the caliber of play that he provides, where he isn't really great, he's got this reputation for being a bum, and a lot of people will be be quick to point out his faults on the ice. This definitely is not the kind of player Vancouver would have targeted either. And in fact, thinking about it, like, hey, imagine Justin Hall on the Vancouver Canucks. Everybody loves to talk smack about Tyler Myers and Noah Juleson. What more about Justin Hall? It would be the exact same thing, if not even worse. So, when we think about the trade package that Detroit would have had to send over to Vancouver to make this sort of a deal work, I mean, there are some of these names that were tossed out there. Jonathan Berggren as a Filipino replacement. Berggren, though, not as proven as Filipino. Berggren also does have a lot of potential, I would say, but there isn't that same guarantee that he is going to pan out. Plus, I would also argue that because Berggren's value is a lot lower, you wouldn't really be getting that one-to-one replacement even if you were to think about the absolute ceiling for Berggren. Like, if you think about Berggren, oh yeah, he could be this 60-point guy, he could be a speedy middle to top six center, and he could do all these things. Even if you think about him like that, the fact is this guy already won it out earlier last season. The guy was already on the trade block for a good chunk of the past few months, so there is reduced value there out of Berggren. I don't really think it's all too comparable. As for defenseman comparisons, yeah, okay, you could talk about Vittoro Mancini, the big right-handed guy from New York, and you can talk about value here. Okay, Mancini is a speedy-ish big guy who is very physical and who can score points. You want to talk about guys who can score points from the blue line? Well, Axel Sandin Pellikka is right there, and there's no way in hell that Stevie Y would be trading that guy in any sort of a move in the next little while. I do kind of get amusement out of the fact that it would be full circle, though. Like, the Canucks traded away Bo Horvat. They got the first-round pick from the Islanders in that trade. They sent that first-round pick to Detroit for Filip Hronek, and with that first-round pick from the Islanders and Vancouver, Detroit selected ASP. Would it not be so poetic for Vancouver to do an entire 360 and acquire ASP after sending away the draft pick that was used to take him 2 seasons ago? I mean, talk about a storybook ending, right? And you want to talk about Swedes? Well, with Marcus Pettersson, Elias Pettersson, Nils Höglander, Nils Åman, Linus Karlsson, why not add on an Axel Sandin Pellikka? All the Swedes in Vancouver. It's like the Sedins never left. I mean, seriously, thinking about those days, that section of Vancouver Canucks history featured the names of Henrik and Daniel Sedin, and then Louis Eriksson and Alex Edler and Jacob Markstrom, and, you know, there have been a bunch of Swedes in Vancouver, so having ASP back in that sort of a deal would be probably moving the needle a lot more than a Vittoro Mancini. Honestly, thinking about it now, would it not balance itself out in theory? Chytil is worth more than Jonathan Berggren, but ASP is worth more than Vittoro Mancini. Maybe add on the first-round pick and you're golden there. Obviously, though, salary permitting, it would definitely not work out in that respect. I mean, Vancouver was never going to retain salary, and Vancouver was never going to get on some players that don't really have much to show for in the long term. Like, I'm sorry, JT Compher, but it's just not going to work out. At least Filipino is young enough where you can think about him in a capacity to grow. So at the end of the day, you know, I get it. This article is proposing the idea of what the Miller trade price would have been for the Detroit Red Wings. It's just really difficult to stomach because of how uneven it would have been salary-wise. And the value of these players is kind of mixed around there too. If Vancouver were to find themselves in a situation where they could have made a trade like this with Detroit and then flipped that subsequent first-round pick they received to Pittsburgh for the same Marcus Pettersson deal, then okay, honestly, I wouldn't really be too upset with that. It's just a lot of the value in that proposed trade would have been with ASP, and that doesn't really help out the Canucks right now, since that is seemingly where they are putting most of their emphasis on in these trade situations and in their progression. They want to keep Quinn Hughes happy. They want to have a competitive team in the short term, and they want to be able to compete. If ASP is acquired, then maybe they trade him for another player that can help him out, like a Josh Norris or something. But I guess Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford would not want to go through the extra hoops and hurdles and the extra step to acquire a guy only to trade him away. They could trade away draft picks. That's fine. Those are abstract. Draft picks aren't even technically real. So it's different when you're dealing with a real-life human being, right? So thoughts in the comment section below about this entire idea. What do you think about the proposed JT Miller Detroit Red Wings trade price? And do you think there was a way the Red Wings could have pulled this off? If you're a Wings fan, would you have wanted to see this go down? Why or why not? Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.